When Focal announces new headphones, I'm all ears. And yeah, pun sort of intended. So Focal makes two of my reference headphones, with the open-back Focal Utopia, in particular the 2022 version of the Focal Utopia, and the closed-back Focal Stelia. Focal also makes what's one of my most frequently carried headphones since its release with the Focal Baptiste, which is my current choice for an audiophile class music listening Bluetooth ANC headphone. So yeah, when Focal releases new headphones, they have my attention. And today they're announcing these, the closed-back Focal Azurys and the open-back Focal Hadenys, two headphones whose names I'll almost certainly continue to mispronounce in the tradition of many Focal headphones names I've mispronounced over the years. Now, one thing that you may have noticed here, if you're familiar with Focal's headphones, is that the Hadenys and the Azurys look a lot like the Bluetooth ANC Focal Baptiste, and that's because they share a lot of chassis DNA, which is pretty obvious. And that, to me, is a very good thing, as the Baptiste chassis fits on most heads very comfortably, mine included. And just as I can wear the Baptiste for hours, I also have no issues very comfortably wearing the Hadenys and the Azurys for extended listening sessions. On my head, all three headphones, the Baptiste, the Hadenys, and the Azurys, fit on my head and over my ears very comfortably. Not perfectly, which I'll get to in a bit, but super comfortably for extended periods. One key advantage with this more compact fold-flat chassis design is portability. And with the performance the Azurys and Hadenys offer, this to me is a very big deal. I know this may sound like sacrilege to some headfires, but not everyone wants to own a fleet of headphones. Some people are looking for one headphone that they can use at home and at the office or even on the go. And if you can get Focal's passive headphone performance in one headphone that is portable enough to take with you, well, again, that is a huge plus. And I'll get to comparing them with Focal's higher-end, larger form factor over-ears shortly. Now, in addition to the chassis design, the Azurys and Hadenys also share driver technology with the Baptiste, with the same magnet, voice coil, and aluminum magnesium M-shaped dome. And that M-shaped dome, by the way, is the exact same one used on the Celestie, and I think also on previous models like the Bentley Radiance, first generation Clear, and the Elier. Now, of course, each of the three, the Baptiste, the Hadenys, and the Azurys, has their own version of this driver platform with differing venting, damping, and volumes. The front panels and cushions are also different. I want to be clear here, though, that the passive Azurys and Hadenys sound very different from the Baptiste. Purely from an audiophile standpoint, they're both better tuned and more resolving than their active Bluetooth ANC sibling, but that should hardly come as a surprise. Now, as far as tuning goes, the Baptiste, while currently my favorite Bluetooth ANC over-ear headphone, would never, for example, be used in a studio for studio work. That just shouldn't be surprising either, given what it is. However, and we'll get to this later too, both the Azurys and the Hadenys not only could be used in professional audio settings, I predict they will be, given their prices and the performance they both offer. Now, taking the Baptiste out of the equation, comparing just the passive Azurys and Hadenys, these two new headphones definitely sound like close siblings, with tunings that overall are quite similar. Of course, one being closed back and the other open back. And the Hadenys and Azurys definitely sound more in line with Focal's flagship class headphones than the Baptiste. Let's start with the closed-back Focal Azurys, as in some ways, all things considered, I'm a little more excited about this one, because excellent closed-back headphones are not, in my experience, a dime a dozen. And for my taste, the Focal Azurys is exactly that, an excellent closed-back headphone that is very Focal and also very reasonably priced at just $549. Right now, if you want to get a Focal made in France, which is where they make their best headphones, if you want to get a Focal made in France passive closed-back headphone, there's the Focal Celestie, which is around $900, and then their flagship closed-back Stelia, which is around $3,000. And sonically, the Azurys, while not as resolving to my ears as the Celestie, and certainly not as resolving as the Stelia, is still very resolving. And actually, I think the Azurys would be more likely to be used in a professional setting than either of its higher-end closed-back siblings because of its tonal balance. The Azurys' tuning is more even-handed, more neutral. And as I've said a zillion times now, neutrality, when it comes to headphones, is more of a range than a single tuning. And the Azurys, for me, is squarely there within that range of neutrality for a closed-back headphone. On the bassier side of neutral to my ears, yes, but still in there. It's definitely more of a studio monitor tuning to me than, for example, the more romantic-sounding Stelia. Now, the new Focal Hadenys at $699 is a bit more pricey than the Azurys, but even at that price, the new Hadenys is an absolute beast. As much as I love Focal's closed-back headphones, they're open-backs, if you can use open-backs, which of course aren't as useful on the go, or in a library, or in an office setting. Well, unless of course you work somewhere like HeadFi's offices where we can listen to anything we want all day. Anyway, when you can use open-back headphones, Focal's open-backs have distinct advantages over their closed-backs, even at their highest tiers, comparing, for example, their best open-back, the Utopia, and their best closed-back, the Stelia. Now, their open backs, and this is no big surprise here, their open backs have airier imaging than their closed backs, and tier for tier more resolution too. I found, for example, that details and images jump out of their open backs like the Focal Clear MG and especially their flagship Utopia, more so than from their closed back counterparts. And the Hadenys has that quality too. Compared to the Azurys, the Hadenys conveys the micro detail stuff with more life and presence. Again, the Hadenys sounds every part the open back Focal, but it's significantly more portable than any such open back Focal before it and is substantially more affordable. Yes, it's $150 more than the Azurys, but it's $699. The Hadenys comes in far lower than the $1,500 Focal Clear MG and far, far lower than the $5,000 Utopia. As I said earlier, the Azurys and Hadenys tunings are overall rather similar, enough so that if Focal named the Azurys the Hadenys closed instead, or the Hadenys the Azurys open instead, there wouldn't have been any confusion as to why. That said, the tonal balance differences are there, with the Hadenys being even more centered in the range of neutrality. Whereas the Azurys is on the bassier side of that neutrality range, the Hadenys' bass is leaner and cleaner in comparison, while still maintaining excellent extension and impact, especially for an open back. And it's not just the bass where this is true, but throughout the entire range, which gives the open back Hadenys more mid-range and treble clarity too. So both the Azurys and Hadenys are in the neutrality range, but the Hadenys is just more plumb in the middle of it to my ears. Again, tier to tier, throughout Focal's range, their open backs have an overall edge over their closed backs in terms of technical performance, in terms of resolution, and the Azurys and Hadenys do not defy that formula, and that should come as no surprise. So if the Hadenys has the sonic edge with me over the Azurys, why did I say earlier that I was a little more excited about the Azurys? The reason is simply because it's closed back, and that opens up more flexibility about where I can take and use passive Focal over-ear performance. Both the Azurys and Hadenys fit in all of my backpacks easily, and even fit in several of my sling bags with a portable digital audio player. And so on-the-go use is on tap for both, but the closed back Azurys, again, just opens up more places and settings they can be used. I was kidding a little earlier about being able to listen to even open back headphones here at HeadFi's office, but I'm not always at HeadFi's office. So despite its sonic advantages, there aren't as many places I can use the open back Hadenys, and so the Azurys simply takes fuller advantage of the portability their design offers. I'm a little more excited about the Azurys then, because again, it gives me passive Focal over-ear performance in more places. Now, there are some things I would change about the Azurys and Hadenys if I could, and one is common to both of them, actually also common to the Baptiste, which uses the same overall design. My head is definitely bigger than the average cranium, enough so that I have to pull open the headbands on these headphones to their largest positions, and while I can wear them comfortably for hours, a perfect fit would probably be had with one more little click out of each side. So, if your brain also requires more room than the average person, keep this in mind. Now, something else that bugged me a little bit was how these headphones came accessorized. To be clear, I love their compact carrying cases, so those are great. But in an age when a lot of companies are generously accessorizing their headphones, the Hadenys, and especially the Azurys, I'll explain the especially part shortly, they come with only one cable each. The Hadenys' 6-foot cable is terminated in 3.5mm unbalanced and comes with a 1/4-inch adapter. Okay, that's fine. But the Azurys comes with a cable that kind of strikes me as circa 2015. That is, the Azurys comes only with a 4-foot cable that has an inline remote and microphone and does not include a 1/4-inch adapter. Although useful for Zoom and Teams calls, the Azurys' basic inline remote mic cable to me doesn't reflect the high performance levels of the headphones it connects to. And while most headfires probably have several 1/4-inch adapters lying around, I do wish the Azurys had one included. In either case, the cable on both has a 3.5mm TRS ear side connection, so aftermarket cables should be readily available, but I think the fully balanced cables may be off the table for these. Other than those things, I'm thrilled with both of these headphones, and I'm very excited Focal has brought their passive over-ear performance to such a portable and reasonably affordable platform with both the Azurys and the Hadenys. Now let's look at measurements, which were made using the Brulin Care Type 5128 measurement mannequin, the current high standard and most human-like of hearing simulators. Please keep in mind that except in the first comparison of the Azurys and Hadenys, which is unnormalized, I've normalized all the other frequency response comparisons to more closely reflect my perceptual comparison of the headphones shown. Oh, I should also mention that Focal specifies the nominal impedance of both headphones to be 26 ohms and shows the sensitivity for both headphones at 100 dBSPL at 1 milliwatt at 1 kilohertz. In terms of voltage, when we measured them, to get to 90 dBSPL at 1 kilohertz, the Azurys required an average of around 44.6 millivolts RMS across several seatings, and the Hadenys required an average of around 42.3 millivolts RMS, so they're very close in terms of sensitivity. Okay, again, this first frequency response comparison of the Azurys and the Hadenys is unnormalized, level set with white noise, and I feel this fairly reflects my perceptual comparison of the two. The Azurys is in blue versus the Hadenys in brown. Here's the Focal Azurys frequency response alone. This is an average of 4 seatings. Here's the Focal Hadenys frequency response alone. This is also an average of 4 seatings. Here are the THD measurements of both the Azurys and Hadenys. These are outstanding, very low THD results for both headphones. The minute differences in distortion between these two is likely due to the open-back Hadenys allowing in a bit more low-frequency energy from ambient during measurement. If our isolation chamber had better low-frequency isolation, I'd guess they'd be essentially identical. That would require a much larger isolation enclosure, and ours is as big as we could fit into our lab and weighs something like 1,200 pounds. This is the Azurys compared to the Focal Celestis. While the Celestis is the more resolving of the two, I find the tonal balance of the Azurys to be more neutral. This is the Azurys compared to the Focal Stellia. Admittedly, the Stellia's incredible resolving ability, which is almost certainly due to its solid beryllium dome drivers, combined with its lusher, more romantic signature, makes it to this day one of the very best closed-back headphones I've ever heard for my preferences. That said, the Azurys is the more neutral sounding of the two tonal balances and still manages to sound like a Celestia and Stellia relative for only $549. This is the Focal Hadenys compared to the Focal Clear MG. The Clear MG is one of my neutral references and is one of the high-end headphones I most recommend as a studio monitor. These two offer different brands of neutrality, but I consider both in the range of neutrality. This is the Hadenys compared to the Focal Utopia 2022 edition. The Utopia is among the most resolving headphones at any price of any type, in my opinion. So with its beryllium driver, the Utopia has the clear resolution advantage here and all that comes with it. Still, the Hadenys being able to sound like a Utopia family member for $699 is outstanding. This is the last frequency response comparison. I wanted to show the Hadenys compared to a legendary headphone that countless headfires know and love. This is the Hadenys compared to the Sennheiser HD650. The Hadenys brings what I'd call a more modern open-back signature, as companies today, including Sennheiser, are bringing more bass to their open-back headphones. Now, because Head Acoustics recently notified me that they've updated MDAQS, that's Multidimensional Audio Quality Score, to MDAQS version 1.1, and we haven't yet updated here, which will likely affect overall scores of some tested devices, I'm going to give you the MDAQS timbre dimension scores for both headphones alone, as the timbre dimension will not be affected by the 1.1 update. Sound Guys also recently started using MDAQS in addition to their measurements, and I like how they described MDAQS. That it's like having sound quality scores produced by a virtual panel of listeners as modeled by the MDAQS algorithm. We posted a couple of videos about MDAQS, which you can find on HeadFi and on our YouTube channel, and we'll be posting more about MDAQS down the road. Anyway, the Hadenys had a MOS-T, that's mean opinion score timbre, of 4.8 out of 5, and the Azurys a 4.7 out of 5. That actually kind of surprised me, as I thought MDAQS would prefer the bassier tonality of the Azurys, but it turns out I was wrong. Now, I've mentioned that I think the Azurys and Hadenys will find their way into pro audio use. So I asked Brian, who works here at HeadFi HQ and whom many of you probably recognize from our videos, to tell us what he thinks of these headphones in a pro audio studio context. Brian has a background in audio and video production and does the bulk of our audio and video editing these days. Now, Brian, when I've been talking about these so far, I've been talking mostly about how I feel about them as an audiophile.
Sure.
I've mentioned that I think they could be used and appropriate for use for studio use. I think they will be. So you're our guy in that realm here. You have a lot of background in audio editing, video editing. So I guess I should ask you, that's why I wanted to talk to you here.
Yep.
Do you think that in terms of tonal balance, either or both of these could be used for professional use?
Oh, they absolutely can. And in fact, I have been. So the Azurys that I have here, I've been using it on an upcoming video that we're working on. I've used it for EQ, I've used it for mixing, so it can absolutely be used in that context.
All right, so that one's closed back.
Mm-hmm.
The Hadenys is open back. In the pro audio world, would you say for the purpose that closed back is more common?
Yeah, generally you might have more than one person in a studio at a time because somebody is there just kind of overseeing the process, and having the closed isolation is nice to have.
Right.
But if you have the ability to use open, I would go open, but generally speaking, closed is usually.
So if you had to choose one for pro audio use, you'd probably say it would be the
Azurys. Yeah,
Azurys.
The Hadenys is if the situation allows.
All right, I did not intend to ask you this. I was going to focus on pro audio, but I'll ask you anyway. So
Okay.
you're a head fire as well. You're an audiophile. So from that part of you,
Yeah.
do you have a preference for?
I have a clear preference. So for music listening, the Hadenys is going to be the one that I reach for. It's a little more resolving. It's got a little more detail and clarity, but it also gives that open presentation, which I think you've mentioned it earlier, but if the option allows, I like to have an open headphone, but it's not always possible.
Right. Yeah, same here. That's exactly how I feel. Again, the Focal Azurys and Hadenys are being announced today and will be available in June. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos as we post them, and I'll see you on the forums at headfi.org.